Hello everybody, this is Cyberboss, and this is going to be a video on installing tgstation-server 4. So before we begin, you need a few things. One, we're going to expect you to have a database server installed. It's going to either be like MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server. Like for SS13, generally you want to have a MySQL or MariaDB database, but it's up to you which one you can pick. You can also use SQLite if you want. That's included with TGS itself. Second, you obviously need a code base, ideally one that's compatible with TGS4. You'll know it is if you have something called the TGS DM API installed, version 5.xx or greater. And yeah, that's about all you need to host. Memory requirements, TGS should have around 400 megabytes of memory dedicated to it. Uh, Ideally 500, along on top of whatever you're going to spend on your Beyond servers. And it should, if you want remote access, you'll need an HTTPS certificate, but we can get to that later. Okay, so to begin with, you're going to want to download the server. To do that, you can go to the tgstation server repo on the tgstation.org, go to releases, and download the latest one. I'm going to go one back just because I want to demonstrate the update functionality. So I'm going to grab 4.5.2. So if you're on Windows, generally you're going to want the server service package from the release. On Linux, you generally want the server console package. You can also run the server console on Windows, but that means you have to have this console window open every time you want to start TGS itself, and you can't manage it with Windows startup and shutdown. So in that case, just grab the server service zip. Wait for that to download. Now, of course, TGS has a prerequisite. TGS4 does. It requires the ASP.NET Core runtime. So to do that, you can go to this link on the README, and you click that. You'll be directed to this page. You're going to want to download x64, assuming you have an x64 system. Otherwise, you're going to download x86 and just run that installer. You may need to restart your PC after running this, but I don't think you do in most circumstances. So we're going to unzip our TGS zip. Just throw it on the desktop. So first time you run TGS, I'm going to be prompted to, it's going to prompt you to run as admin first of all. Go ahead and, it's going to detect that the service is not installed. So it's going to ask you if you want to install it. Generally click yes. It's going to give you an admin prompt, hit yes to that. Then it's going to give you the setup wizard. So here's the options it's going to give you. The API port is the port that you're going to connect to TGS on, not your game server. This is the port you use for administrating TGS itself. Default port is 5000. You can use whatever you want. Just a warning to not use SQLite because it's not really tested. For this, we're going to, since I already have SQL Server installed, I'm just going to use that. It's easier. It comes with Windows authentication. Actually, no, we'll use MariaDB. No, I can't remember the password. We'll just use SQL Server. Well, I'll show you a MariaDB connection just for posterity. So if you enter MariaDB, it's going to ask you to give you the server address and port. So normally that's 127.0.0.1:3306 for default installations. It can be whatever you configure it to. Usually a blanket will also do that as well. Database name should not exist. TGS will handle, well, it can exist. You can just do create database, but TGS will need DDL permissions like create table, update table, delete, drop table, drop column, etc. to build its schema. So in most cases, you can just give TGS a create database perm, or if you're care about more security, you can create an empty database and then allow TGS to populate it. Call this TGS demo. If the database already exists, you'll say yes or no to this. Enter your username, enter your password. This is not going to work because I don't have it set up. So I'm just going to use SQL Server. Again, local server, database name. Database does not exist. SQL Server allows you to use Windows authentication. It's pretty simple. works. Minimum database password user length, minimum database user password length is the minimum amount of characters you want users to have in their passwords. It's enforced on the server. Default's 15. You can set it to whatever you want. Default timeout for sending and receiving beyond topics. This is a bit of a legacy config, but it's still used as a default. It's the amount of time that TGS will wait when sending a topic to beyond for a reply before assuming it was lost or runtimed or whatever. Default's 5 seconds. You can change it later. GitHub personal access token used here is used solely for two things. It's used to fetch releases from TGS for updates to the server itself, and it's used to fetch metadata for pull requests if no token is present for that instance. You can totally leave this one blank if you want. It's never used for any pushing or writing activity. It's just used to bypass rate limits. So I'm just going to leave it blank. Host API documentation is a bit of an advanced setting. It will publicly host the specifications for the tgstation-server HTTP API on your server. Generally, you can just leave this as no. File logging, you generally want this on a production server. Log file directory, by default, it will be in program data / tgstation server on Windows or /log on Linux. Leaving it blank as the default. I'll leave it blank for now. You can just check it later. You want to enter the log levels for normal logs, you leave that as default debug. You can go up to trace or down to errors or whatever you want. You can always modify these settings later as well. Limit for Microsoft logs, you generally want to leave this as a warning. It can be stupidly verbose. Web control panel. Once this message that says it's incomplete is gone, you can say yes, but for the time being, just say no. While web control panel is hosted elsewhere to access the server, if you know what the access control allow origin header does, this sets it to star. Generally, you want to say, I'm going to say you want to say no to this. And some cores allowed origins. This is more advanced options. You can just leave this blank. So it's going to do its initial setup, create the database, make sure everything's running properly, and yeah, once it says starting hosting and no errors occur, you're good to go. Now, since you've installed a service, you don't want to leave this running, but we'll get to that later. We'll leave the console open for now, just so we can get some debug information. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is get the control panel. The web control panel is a work in progress, but currently we have the desktop control panel. Works on Windows, guaranteed to work on Windows 10. It may also require the 3.1 runtime to work. I'm not too sure of that. If it doesn't work for you, you're going to want to grab that, but just download the zip, unzip it somewhere. Now, the thing about the desktop control panel is it sometimes has a glitch where it won't render properly on Windows. I'm going to show you a workaround for that. It can be used in normal circumstances as well. Normally, you just run tgstation.server.controlpanel.exe. If you ever have a glitch where it just doesn't want to launch, try running it with the following command line. That is to add --win32 hack to the launch parameters. You can create a shortcut for that or just launch it through the command line. But under most circumstances, just double-clicking the program will work. So what you're going to do, let's get rid of these just so confuse people. You're going to want to add server connection, and you're going to want to leave it as the default address. You're going to want to click Use Plain HTTP and Default Credentials. The GitHub token here is used by the control panel to fetch pull request metadata and bypass rate limits is obviously not needed. And then go ahead and click connect. And then, so if you see everything work out here, if you don't get any errors after clicking connect, you know that your server's installed correctly. So what you're going to want to do after that is Control C on the console window, just to get it out of the way, and then go to run services.msc to get to the service control panel. And then you have tgstation-server 4 in your service list. What you're going to want to do is then start the service, and it will launch it in the background. You can set the startup types, so it launches when you want, like with Windows on trigger, whatever. Then just refresh your connection here, make sure it still works. It may take a minute to come back, or just not work at all. Let me just pause this video. When you get startup errors like that, you always want to check the logs in the program data. In my case, it's actually a permissions error on the database because the server service runs as a different user account than my own. So what I actually need to do is go into SQL Studio and give permissions on this database to the system user. So that's under security logins, entity authority / system. Go on, change its properties, and go to its user mapping. Click the database you want to use, and then give a DB owner on it. After that, the service should be able to start properly. And there we go. Okay, so now that you have your server running, you don't have your Dream Daemon / Beyond server running yet. You need to do more configuration before that can happen. TGS is a multi-user environment, so you can add more users if you want, set usernames or passwords and passwords, or on Windows you can actually use Windows logins as user accounts if you so desire. Each user has a bunch of permissions. Every permission is says what it can do, and yeah, you can modify those to your liking so other people can manage your server. But to actually use the server, you're going to need to add an instance. So each instance has a name and a path, so set those appropriately. I'm going to call this demo instance. Okay, so you add the instance, and it's started in the offline mode, so you're going to want to turn it online by checking this checkbox here and then hitting save. You also might want to change static file mode to the second option here. Authorized users can read and write any file. That allows you to do remote configuration management if you so desire. And then once your instance is online, you can open the node, and it will show a bunch of other stuff, like user management for that particular instance. You can see all the permissions a single instance can give out, so you can change these as you so desire. First thing you do for an instance is get your repository. So this can be any Beyond repository. It doesn't even need the DM API, it just makes things easier for later. These two fields here, access username and personal access token, are optional. They're used for some things like posting comments when test merges occur, pushing commits, etc., etc. It's completely optional. I'm not going to go into it for this video. For this demo, I'm going to use tgstation as a repository. You can set the custom branch. If not, it will use the default GitHub branch. And go ahead and clone that. That's going to spawn up a job, which will take a while to complete, depending on the size of the repository. After that, you're going to want to go and install a Beyond version to run your server with. By default, we'll select the latest Beyond version, and you can just hit install. I'll kick off another job to get that set up. And then you're going to want to go to deployment. On here, Most SS13 code these days requires trusted mode, but TGS defaults to safe by default. You're going to want to change this switch and save changes. If you don't have a DM API, you're also going to need to change this setting on the Dream Daemon page too. But if you do, that's not necessary. On the Dream Daemon page, you can set the port you want users to connect on. So the default's 1337. I'll just leave it as that. You can set the server to automatically start with the instance. The instance will always start with TGS itself, depending on how it's configured, if it's online or offline. If you set this and you have the server set up, this basically tells the server to launch Dream Daemon whenever Windows reboots. So that's a nice thing to have. Heartbeat seconds is how TGS checks if Dream Daemon's live, if the DM API is present. By default, it's 60 seconds. If it misses 4 of these, the server will be automatically rebooted by TGS. And this is where you can reconfigure the timeout for sending beyond topics. While we're waiting for this to clone, let me go over the actual configuration settings of TGS in depth. So what that setup wizard did was generate this app settings.production.json folder. If you open this up, you can see things are configured. So there's your database configuration. This server version is populated for Postgres and MySQL/MariaDB databases. It should be automatically filled, but if you ever change your server backend, you're going to want to update this field. You have your API port. This is the version of the configuration file. You should read change logs to see if this ever needs updating. It can also tell you how to update other configuration settings. The GitHub access token setup wizard mode should stay as never. So setup wizard never reruns. Default beyond topic timeout. Restart timeout is the time TGS will wait for itself to reboot before forcefully restarting whenever an update's applied or something else. Use basic watchdog. You generally want to leave this false. We have the basic watchdog. So TGS is able to update your game seamlessly when the world reboots. That's what the Windows and POSIX watchdog do. If you set use basic watchdog to true, your server will be hard rebooted every time the game restarts. Host API documentation, we went over that. Password length. Instance limit and user limit are just some limits to make sure spam doesn't occur on your API. Valid instance paths, default null. This is a white list of paths that instances can be created in. Generally not needed. File logging, directory null defaults to the default, otherwise you can change it. You can also disable it entirely, change the log levels as well, and web control panel stuff. I'm going to pause this video until this clone is complete. Actually, let's go over the chat system. So what chatbots are integrations with other chat services, or with chat services in general. Currently 2 are supported, IRC and Discord. And yeah, you can create bots here. I'm going to create a bot just for demonstration purposes. Alright, I'll just regenerate this token after this video so I can just do it properly. So this is it's a test bot I just created using using the Discord developer tools. By default, bots don't speak on any channels. They only speak on channels you allow them to. One second, let me just configure some channels for this bot. Okay, so yeah, bots will talk in whatever channels they have access to after you configure them. So to configure them, what you want to do is you're going to want to grab a channel ID. You can do that by enabling developer mode in Discord and then going to right-clicking a channel and copy ID. That'll give you a channel ID, and then you just paste it here. And you can configure what sort of messages this channel receives. By default, the game will always be able to see these channels if they have the DM API installed. But you can allow it to use admin commands or receive watchdog message over deployment messages. We'll just enable all those for testing sake. And then you can see the spot here. Or wait, I need to invite this bot to my server. 1 second. Or it should be in the server. 1 second, where's the default? Oh, yeah, you can see it in the server here. You can talk to it by typing !TGS or pinging it. You can get you a list of commands by saying help. Comes with a few built-in commands, but most commands are generated by the game. And yeah, so that'll be available in your Discord server. You can look up how to if you just Google how to get a Discord bot token, you should be able to go through the process of creating a bot. Now that the repository is cloned, we can, well, first let's go over test merging. So what test merging does is it takes a pull request and merges it locally. Whenever you want to update the repository, first you want to check this checkbox. What it does is it'll fetch the remote branch and reset all its changes to that before doing any other operation. So basically it's a hard update. Then after that, check whatever pull requests you want to merge locally. So let's see something visible. Just nothing good today. Whatever. We'll just do a random one for now. Sure, Hillwich Hotel, whatever. So once you made all your changes that you want to make, scroll all the way to the bottom, hit apply changes. This will make your repository updates and test merges in a job, which will be done over here. It should only take a few seconds. There we go, that's all done. Then you want to go, like, before you can launch the server, you need to build it, and that's called deployment in TGS language. So if you've configured everything correctly, you should just be able to hit deploy repository code server. And if you set up your chatbot to receive deployment messages, it should now post a message that a deployment is happening. Stuff like the local commit, the branch commit, and active test merges will be here. Pause this video while this is going on. Say you want to configure TGS to automatically keep your code up to date. In order to do that, you're going to want to click on this instance node here and set your automatic update interval. What this will do is it will hard reset to your upstream branch every X minutes, whatever you set it to. Now, whether or not test merges are kept during that is based on this setting. Where is it? This setting here. It will attempt to merge from upstream instead of. No, that's not it. Here it is. Automatic updates maintain test merges. If this is set, a merge commit will attempt to be created, and if it's not able to be created, a hard reset will be performed. So, yeah, that's how you set automatic updates. Now, one thing you need to do for like most FSS13 code bases is set up configuration. The way configuration works is, since config is not something you want to track from the repository, what we do is create static files for this. So TG code has two static folders, data and config. So what we can do is, since the data directory is generated entirely by the game, we can go to configuration, game static files, add item, and just create an empty data directory. You really should do this before deploying, because after you make these changes, you'll need to redeploy to get your changes. I'll do that later. So you'll need an empty data directory, and you'll also need a config directory if you want to have custom configs. So the way to set this up is you create the directory, but you need to populate it with the configs from the repository. So this can be done manually if you navigate to where your instance is stored on disk. If you go into repository, you just copy the entire config folder from the repository folder to the configuration game static files config folder. From here, you can set up your set up your configs as you want them, like setting up your database and whatever other options you want to set. But the important thing is after these directories are created, you need to deploy your code to get these changes. Otherwise, they won't be present on the server. So I'll come back once this job is finished. As a side note, you can clear out these completed jobs at any time by just dragging the scroll bar to the right and then hitting X on the completed jobs. That way you can get a better view. Once you do your first deployment, you'll be given an estimate of when the next one will be done. It just finished up, so now we are good to start the server. To do that, just have to hit Start Server in the Dream Newman page. That'll take a few seconds to get started, but once it is, you should be able to just connect to your game using Beyond. Note that you should not run the Beyond pager, that is beyond.exe, on your server, because it will cause issues when launching servers. I'm going to do it just now, just for demo's sake, because I need to be able to connect to the game. But generally, you're going to want this application closed when running servers. Hitting Control O to connect, and connecting to 127.0.0.1 and my configured port, which is 1337. And there you have it. You have a hosted SS13 server using tgstation-server. And as you can see, since we have DMA API integration, you can see whatever pull requests we have tested for Gen 8. Now, on the note of updating TGS itself, when TGS releases a new version, you can automatically update using the server administration page. From this page, you can also remotely download TGS log, which is handy. So to update to a new version, you want to go to the server administration page. It's going to show you the latest available version. So it's going to prompt you. This is important because big changes can happen. You can check by configuration version here. If config changes do happen, that means you can update the app settings.production.json or restart your server or applying the update. So you can see what's changed in this version. But yeah, if any configuration changes are made, you can hit them and make it whatever changes set in here. Otherwise, you can drop them off otherwise. So to apply the update, once you're done, this button will allow you to update the server. Just click it, click it and confirm. The update will be in the background. As you can see, our DMA API integration tells us that an update's in progress. And once it's done, after a few seconds, it'll show that it's updated and reconnected. So now you have an updated server. And that's basically all the basics of hosting TGS. HTTPS. Let me go over that really quickly. So I'm going to assume, so the way HTTPS works is you need a third-party web server to proxy the connection to TGS over an HTTPS connection. So on Windows, what you can do is use IIS, which is generally included. You might need to enable it using the Turn Windows Features On and Off panel. It's under Internet Information Services. You should just be able to check that. And yeah, you'll get the IIS tool, which is here, Internet Information Services Manager. Reverse proxying is a bit complicated. What you need installed using the web platform installer is the URL rewrite module. I think it's URL rewrite 3.0 or 2.0, whichever one's the latest. Once you have that, Once you have that, you're going to want to make a website for TGS, called TGS proxy. The physical path doesn't matter. Just put it to a directory that doesn't exist. You're going to set the binding to HTTPS on the default port. Requires server name indication, might be useful if you're doing a bunch of other stuff on this server. And you'll set your SSL certificate. Getting a certificate and installing it is beyond the scope of this video, so we're just going to use the dev cert. You might need to create this directory. Okay, so once that's set up, you're going to want to click on the website, go to URL rewrite. You're going to want to add a rule for the first proxy, and then you want to set the redirect path to wherever you have TGS installed. So in our case, that's localhost and port 5000. And you want to enable SSL offloading. And then I believe that's enough to make it work. Let's test it out. So again, connection to localhost 5000, default credentials. Since we haven't changed them, you always want to change the default credentials of the admin password, just so randos can't just log into your server at will. And also, if you're doing remote access, you'll need to unblock the ports you're using, of course. Again, beyond the scope of this video. But hopefully, or wait, if you're using HTTPS, make sure you're doing whatever port you forwarded on. In our case, it's 443. So with any luck, you get a connection. And that's how you set it up over HTTPS. That's about it for what I can discuss in this video. If you require more questions, a lot of this is explained in the READMEs on the tgstation server repo, or you can ask Cyberboss in hosting questions in the CoderBus Discord. I'll include an invite link to that Discord guild in the video description. Thanks for watching, and happy Space Station 13.